Branding in catering is solely defined by somebody being able to look at it from far away and knowing exactly where that came from and creating that crave-worthy desire of like, oh, I know exactly where that's coming from and I want to get my hands on it and get an extra sandwich that's sitting there.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Performance Revolution web series with our partners at Integra. And if you're a hospitality operator who's looking to drive sales and profitability in 2025, I think we have a great conversation for you today. We're going to talk about boosting profitability and really focusing on a great opportunity, which could be your catering business inside your operation. My name is Matt Rolfe. I'm a hospitality leadership coach. But today, what I want to focus on is these two remarkable guests that are bringing us their experience, bringing us their time, so we can share hopefully some context and some stories that'll give you enough information so you can go act, drive a conversation with your team, and implement solutions that can drive you towards your results in 2025. Before we get into the introductions, I want to jump right into a question. And Kelly, if you don't mind, just so we can give the leaders some context that are watching, if you could go back and tell your 20-year-old self one lesson that you've learned in your career that would have accelerated your results, your happiness, your balance, what would that lesson to your own self, what would that lesson be?
Great question. I would say going back 20 years to when I was really, really young, I would say, the biggest thing is that everyone is a leader. And regardless of who your leader or who your boss is, you are in control of your own leadership skills and the way that you choose to lead those around you. And so I think it's really important that people own that and recognize that they're in control of their own destiny and to lean on those that are around you, but learn from them, both good and bad, as to how you want to define your leadership skills. Because I think that that's where you really learn a whole lot about who you are as a person.
And was there a point for you when you were, growing throughout your career and all the success that you've had in the different roles? Was there just a point where you moved from seeing yourself as an employee, or maybe a better context is when you saw the switch in yourself? Because sometimes our inner voice is harder on us than how other people see us. But when you started to see yourself as a leader, kind of when did that light switch go off for you? Is there a certain role, experience, or even a conversation that shifted your perspective?
Yeah, I think it was definitely at one point in my life, I worked for a company called Edible Arrangements. And that was sort of my first opportunity where I was helping to coach franchisees on how to grow their business. And I was given the opportunity to sort of stand in front of a room full of franchisees that have invested their life, their money, their livelihood into operating these businesses. And I was up there talking about fruit and chocolate and, how you could use that to grow your business and get a couple extra transactions in. And it was at that kind of moment that I was really recognized the fact that what I was saying was really having an impact on the people that were in that room. And they were taking that and they were embracing that and bringing that back to their businesses. And I feel like I caught the bug at that point of loving that feeling of being able to work closely with somebody to inspire somebody and get them going. And I don't think I've stopped since. So it was definitely that mentality of helping others that really sort of sparked where I wanted to go with my career.
Absolutely love that. And that's really what we're looking to drive with this conversation is how can we share information that's not about, our story, but every question that I ask today to Peter or to Kelly, how we design this for those watching is so we can see ourselves inside the question. When someone's answering, we all have our own experience, whether it's looking at it through our leadership plan, how to become more profitable, grow a revenue stream. But when we're asking questions to our guests here today, because we can all relate to the stories and experiences they share, and just be curious a little bit longer. How can we just listen and think about, even if you were so successful this year, what could you possibly shift and change to continue to drive next year? And if this year was challenging, which it was for me, I can share that 2024 is an interesting year to say the least. I'm looking at now, so how can I stay curious? How can I can evolve? So Peter, share a little bit about me when it comes to Integra. What are some of the things that you've seen your team do to drive success for your partners? And it can be around, our conversation stays around profitability, but share a little bit about what you've seen you and your team do to support your partners.
So thank you. Good question. Again, thank you for this opportunity today. I really appreciate it. the one thing that I feel that we can do for the leaders in the hospitality industry is the greatest gift of time. They got to realize they don't have a lot of time. So what we can do at Integra, as the world's largest food group purchasing organization, we can help them focus on what they have to focus on. We can provide them with, we can help them leverage our strategic purchasing power to find items, find the products that they need quicker, faster, reducing the amount of time they're going to be doing searching for things or the right products. They'll be able to focus more on their business and do what's going to be best for their overall guest experience. We want to help our partners not only strive, but to thrive in today's competitive landscape.
And I love that. Like, that's one thing that I've seen over the last couple of years as we look at partnership with our suppliers is I think right now we have suppliers coming in their lane. If we can find time, often we talk about return on investment or profitability. But really, as leaders, if we can find a return on time, what would the compound impact be if you had 2 more hours to focus on your guests or your people? If you did that, that's 2 weeks a year. You could be investing in the development of your people if you found 2 hours a week. So when you have a partner who's coming forward, who's finding space and time, so finding ordering, finding better product, finding if we have a shortage on deliveries, whichever it is, and there's options. There's somebody like Kelly who's helping people accelerate a strategy rather than trying to create it. After, what could we do with that time? And that's really what we're looking for. Now what I'd love to do is introduce our guests. I want to hear the story, Kelly. I want to hear the story. Tell me a little bit about you, what you do, but more importantly, who you support.
Yeah. So my name is Kelly Grogan. I am the co-founder of a company called Crumbs, and we work with restaurant operators to help them optimize their incremental revenue channels. So we focus on growing catering, group dining, delivery, fundraising programs, and local store marketing for many restaurant groups across the United States today. And I think, Matt, you really nailed kind of what we try to do. We're here to be a partner to help you maximize those 2 hours you're able to get back. And if you have an extra 2 hours, how can we focus on catering and growing that program, focusing on your local store marketing and making them those incremental programs just as important to your business as ordering your food, running your payroll, and paying attention to those other topics, because these are the topics that are going to continue to grow your business and make sure that you're open for years to come.
And I put you on the spot here a little bit, if that's okay, and ask you just a question. But when you look back on your time with your partners, is there an aha moment, a success story, just a time when you were able to work with a client and support them? And today we're talking about one stream, and we can expand to whatever's best for the conversation. But when it comes to you supporting somebody, was it just a really good breakthrough, and not necessarily for you, but for them?
Yeah. We've been very lucky to be able to bring what we do to so many restaurant operators and get great feedback like that. And I would say, my favorite aha moments is when they look at sort of, capturing that new catering sale, building that new partnership in the local community, and they actually get their orders from it. We start from the very beginning of how do you partner inside of your restaurant, and how do you make sure your team members are speaking about the brand appropriately. And so when I look at groups like, whether it's Doghouse, it's Crazy Pita, it's Old Carolina, all 3 of those restaurant groups have had great success in scaling their catering program just by really small changes that we made to, the menu, the way that the team sort of interacts with the catering program, and the way that they're talking about it in their local communities. So when we see double-digit growth with catering programs like that, we consider that a pretty big win and a pretty big testimonial.
And here's what I wanted. I love the answer, because it shares what we're sharing here today. None of this is idea or theory. It's been practice. These are proven best practice examples, and we want to share context and story. But part of the opportunity, why I really am grateful to the team at Integra, is allowing us to bring global industry experts with proven strategies, no matter where the market is. US, we had a conversation in another episode about the UK. We want to bring best practice solutions that are as applicable to your market. So although these operations might be in the US currently, working on convincing Kelly to take on some Canadian clients. It's a conversation we'll have after this call, Kelly. But it's just as applicable, right? Sales are sales, guest hospitality is hospitality. Every solution we bring, it may have happened with some great growing brands in the US, experienced double-digit growth, but it can happen for you in the Canadian market as well. Peter, tell me a little bit about you, who you are, what you do, and who you support.
So I'm just a guy who loves this hospitality industry. I've been in it for over 30 years now. Currently, I'm vice president of distributor relations at Integra, and I was formerly responsible vice president for the street sales team across Canada. At Integra, I currently support all of our partners at all different levels, whether it's helping them get listings at the distributors, our introductions to different sales members of our different members of our sales team, or we have introductions to account national executives that help our larger clients find the best solutions for them all the time. You know, at Integra, we pride ourselves by saying we're much more than a GPO. We're a performance improvement organization. We want to do everything that we can to help improve our partners in their day-to-day business. You know, who do I support or who do I benefit? You know, I look after the benefit of all of our partners. I support, in Integra, we support all the stakeholders that are involved in a partnership. And it's not just two. It's not just the Integra and the client, but it's the client, it's the manufacturer, the distributor, and Integra. We find the solution for all four partners and make it work. And that's the best way to make any partnership work.
And what was your first role? 30 years in the industry, what was your first role? I know we talked, he started driving a truck. I know he's back at Halifax now, but here who we had on another episode. But what was your first role with the company?
I was fortunate, very fortunate life. I started a startup company, a startup bakery with a couple of partners. And acquainted it up. It was a small bakery in a small little village off of the island of Montreal. It was a great experience. It was the whole thing from startup to everything. It was awesome.
So we've got a few decades of experience in this industry here we're going to bring forward. We all are very, very young in this industry, but we do have a great set of experience that we're going to bring forward. And I want to jump right into the conversation when we go to, Kelly, I want to go back to you, but you know, as I was looking when we first met, and I met you across a table that was hosted by a dear friend of ours, Barcelona Wine Bar. I was blown away by the experience, but there's about 20 of these incredible, remarkable leaders that all have something to share. But what I watched is there was like this little mini circle that was crowding around Kelly. I hadn't met anybody in this room. So, and to be honest, networking, meeting new people in that setting to me is one of the things I work on all the time. I'm not great at networking. But as I kept moving my seat closer and closer to Kelly to hear what everybody was interested in. But what I learned was a lot about Kelly. Share, like, why is there so much interest around something that's not necessarily new when it comes to catering, but why do you think people are so drawn towards what you're sharing and what's possible when we look to embrace additional revenue streams for our business in 2025?
Yeah, I think, you know, catering is a big buzzword right now. Everybody's talking about catering. And I think, unfortunately, everybody's saying you need to do catering. And so restaurant operators are all just kind of struggling with how do I handle this concept of catering within my four walls? And they're really trying to, if you can remember a time when some of those third-party platforms like an Uber Eats or DoorDash didn't exist, and then they came on board, everybody scrambled to figure out, how do I handle this sort of operation inside of my building? How do I handle delivery? And that's what we're seeing right now with catering, is how do I make this sort of very separate sort of business and operation work within my four walls? And I think what's most important about that is that you need to assess it and look at it like it is its own little business and its own operation, because it is different recipes, different procedure, different technology, different teams. It is a whole different kind of business. And everybody's asking, well, you know, how do I grow my catering sales? How do I get more catering revenue? Because operators love it from the standpoint that if you can open your doors and already have thousands of dollars in transactions already in the bank, every other problem becomes a lot less stressful, a lot easier. It's a better day when you start the day with that kind of revenue. And so everybody's asking, you know, how do you get more catering orders? How do you make that catering program work within your four walls? And so that was, I think we've had dozens of those conversations since we had that dinner, which have been fun.
And just something from my side that I'm curious about is when the calls, like, so when you're doing a panel at a big conference, like I've seen this year, or a talk or engaging with leaders, or the phone rings, are you getting calls about how do I create, and I know we'll go deeper into this as we go on, but just to kind of frame it, are they calling about how do I get the menu right? How do I, create the right offering? How do I market and sell? Where's the market coming to before we move kind of the solution set? Because I think this will relate to the audience. Like when they hear catering, what do they think? How do I get my menu, or how do I actually make it successful, or is it all?
It's funny. Those are all the questions that I ask back to the operator. Everybody, and this is no different, right? When you talk to operators, everything is focused around how do I get another transaction? How do I get more revenue through the door? How can I get just one more catering order, one more per week, one more per month? And so every one of our conversations are, how do I get more catering orders? And I will tell you, it all goes back to those questions that you were just talking about. It goes back to, is your menu correct? Because if your menu is not nailing it, then that's the reason why you're not getting orders. Your technology, your guest experience, your reputation, all of those things play into a catering program. And so that's always the question is, how do I get more catering orders? And the answer lies in fixing all of those different types of things.
And I just want to recap there. Like, I think there's so much power in what you just shared, right? It's not about the menu and just selling catering. So it's our menu design, in a profitable and executable way. And then also we have a technology play there, whether that's your own internal website. I'm sure Code's got lots of other options. But one thing I shared most, it's still the same guest experience. With my clients, I focus on staff and guest experience with so many of my clients, but does your catering experience match your in-restaurant experience? So we create return customers. And I think that's one of the pieces why I feel this conversation is so in demand. It's not just about, we want to sell more, but in a way that draws more people back into our restaurant. So Kelly, I want to go to three things, and then we're going to come back to Peter as we get some context here. But what are 3 steps that somebody could take that allow them to be successful? So if someone's listening and say, okay, I want to have this conversation with my team, what are the first 3 things that they need to ask themselves, dig into before they go and launch or relaunch their catering program?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is going to be the commitment to it. You can't approach it with a 50%. You can't approach it as you're going to just, hire somebody and they're going to hire a salesperson and immediately your catering sales are going to grow. It is something where you need to commit to it. You need to put time on the calendar and you need to get the buy-in from your team. The biggest thing is when you look at catering within your 4 walls, it's a team effort. And if you do not have the buy-in from every single person that's touching the process of catering in your business, you're setting yourself up for failure on it. And so I'd say commit to making a plan and commit to making a plan with your team. And then the ones that follow shortly after that, you nailed it when we talk about menu. If you're not making money with catering, there's no reason to do it. That's the whole purpose of it. And so is it something where, your menu is profitable, it's executable, and it's something where it's going to be in demand from your guests? You really got to kind of start there. Last would be guest experience. And this is the first exercise that we bring or we execute with any of our partners. And I would challenge anybody listening to this to do this. Go try to place a catering order with your own restaurant brand. Go on your website, call the restaurant and see what the experience is when somebody calls and asks about catering. And I promise you, unfortunately, you might be a little bit disappointed. But gosh, there's a lot of opportunity to grow in looking at that.
And I love that, right? How do we I hate the term mystery shop, but mystery, hate's a strong word, but just like, how do we mystery shop ourselves? We have to do it, right? How do we get a lens into what our experience is? But one thing I want to share now, and Kelly, our margins are a bit different up here in Canada than what you might see in your operators. But Peter, I'll go through this with you on the fly. So say a restaurant, hospitality operator, restaurant group is break even. And they're able to increase, say, do $1,000 of sales in catering. What percentage of those sales do you think are profit?
What do I think are profit?
On the increase, if they're at break even. Just take a guess, because I got some real data here that I'll share.
20%.
20%. So right now, the average operator in Canada makes less than 5% net profit. Where I sit in Ontario, it's less than 3%. On the East Coast, we have a little bit of help. West Coast is around 2.8% net profit. We're all smart people. Like if somebody said, "Hey, give me your money in your savings account," we're going to hopefully kick out 3%. But where I get most excited about this, if we increase that $1,000, the only cost, there might be a slight labor increase, and there might be a slight, depending on cost of how you're structuring and deciding to produce the production of your catering menu. But say we're going to round it 40%. So say product cost is 30, we add another 10. I know we're not as profitable as the US up here, Kelly, but so if we say we're 40, there's a 60% net on the additional $1,000 in catering. we're trying to anchor the why, right? So we're doing all the work, and sometimes it's the extra effort. A conversation I had before this, sometimes it's those, I know pennies don't exist anymore, but it's those nickels and dimes that add up. This could be the difference in all the effort you put in, not into catering. This is about your entire business. If we can increase that extra bit, there's a huge profitability potential, plus a huge guest experience opportunity as well.
I just want to interject. You guys are talking about the menu, talking about all that other stuff, but there's a component that, if it's a restaurant and they're going to catering, they have their plates, they have their utensils, but they have to do all this and take it out. So they have to look at all of the packaging and all of that's required to get it out and get it and be able to sustain how it's supposed to look in an exterior environment. So it's another challenge that they're faced with every day, and it's a big one.
I think it's a great example, and Kelly, I would love you to share just on like packaging advancements. One of my best experiences, there's a large group here, it's got about 1,300 locations, quick service chicken outlet. If you're from Canada, you probably know what it is. Starts with an S, as a Swiss chalet is maybe what it's called. But one of their packaging innovation, the packaging innovation that Swiss Chalet did, created their majority delivery. They have an in-store experience. It went heavy into third party, but the packaging innovation that's coming is why this is more exciting for me, because we can deliver a quality product. Kelly, talk to me a little bit about innovation. Can we get the same quality product we would expect in restaurant, in somebody's office, in somebody's home, based on what third parties pushed forward and now catering has the opportunity to leverage?
Yeah, and Peter, you nailed it. When it comes to packaging, it is such a critical component when looking at your catering program. And I think we're going to talk about that, but you want people to know where that food comes from. And you lose it if you're just sticking it in just a plastic bag, brown box, and sending it out the door. But when you look at the packaging side of things and trying to design your menu, this is where it goes back to in committing to your catering program. It is not about taking your regular menu, just like the third parties, right? It is not about taking your regular menu and sticking it and saying, oh, this serves 10 now because we just 10x the recipe. It is not about just taking it and saying, right. And unfortunately, that was, that's the calculator that's been out there. It's like, if you want to design a catering program, just multiply your recipes, stick them in a bigger container, let it slosh around, like the whole thing. And it's out there, right? And you think about it, these high, profitability transactions and people spending hundreds of dollars to get it and say like, that's weird. That's not what I was expecting. And so menu design is everything, and it is looking at what can I cook inside of the restaurant in bulk. If I can't fry 500 chicken tenders, well, then I should be very careful about putting chicken tenders on a box lunch somewhere. The thing that the pasta that the sauce separates, you can't send it with the sauce, right? And so you really need to go through and cook the whole menu. You need to test it. You need to look at it and decide what that guest experience is going to be. But it is not about just taking your menu and crossing out, to go and putting catering on top of it. It's just not.
Love it. And maybe just before we move on, because I want to lose the conversation, and Peter, I think we'll tie back in here in a second. But Kelly, you mentioned the language brand, like you said, so that like when it's quality of product, it's brand and packaging. What should somebody consider when something arrives? What makes it look, feel great, but also have a connection to, when we order, we probably know the brand. Just tell me a little bit about what brand means to you when it comes to this opportunity.
Yeah, brand means to me working in an office building and walking past that glass office and saying like, oh man, they ordered lunch today. I wonder what it was. And you can't tell. And you kind of go into the break room afterwards, right? And you start picking through the table and you're like, I don't really know what this is. It's not really identifiable, or this was really good. Does anybody know where it came from? Branding in catering is solely defined by somebody being able to look at it from far away and knowing exactly where that came from and creating that crave-worthy desire of like, oh, I know exactly where that's coming from and I want to get my hands on it and get an extra sandwich that's sitting there. You want to make sure that you are thinking of every catering order that you come to. When you see how many the catering order is for, how many it's set to feed, 20 guests, 30 guests, 40 guests, you want to think of that as 20, 30, 40 new opportunities to put your brand inside of their hands. And if you're not doing that with your packaging in any capacity, then it's wasted opportunity.
So one thing, if anybody's there taking notes or if you've got a phone, that's one thing I'd write down. There's certain language that just really lands. crave-worthy desire. So I think all the work that I do with my clients starting with an intention and an outcome. And I think that's, and one thing we did with third-party delivery is it created revenue, but not necessarily profit. But who owns the client is what I asked. So who owns your guest? And it was an opportunity based on your delivery experience to continue to own your guests so it doesn't get funneled into all this choice on these apps. But what I think decided, if we approach catering with how do I create crave-worthy desire, whether they reorder catering or whether they had it was so great, such great quality that I want to go in with my friends, family, and others and go in and experience inside the four walls. I think it's just such a brilliant way that for me as a visual learner and possibly for your managers creates context around it. But Peter, tell me, how has you and your team helped some of your partners, in this area of catering? Have you maybe helped a client be successful, or just help them have this conversation again in your lane, in your lens with Integra?
Okay. So yeah, we've had many, in fact, and I have one that stands out more than others recently. And as you guys know, in this world, there's a lot of noise in the industry. There's so much noise. You hear so much. So what we help do is we sat down with the partner. We talked to them. We explained to them. And most importantly, we listened, right? Yeah. What's going on? What are you hearing? And we helped them demystify what they were hearing in the market. Because like I said, there's so much noise out there, right? So after a discovery session, we sat down with a plan. We charted out what we wanted to do, how they wanted to do it. We're not a cut and paste organization. We're going to listen. We're going to find the solution that's tailored for you and that best suits your needs, and we'll go from there. Just to tie back to the packaging aspect, in Canada, the restrictions on packaging and compost and single-use plastics, they're huge compared to the States. I was just in the States not long ago, and it's like there's plastic straws, and there's like I don't understand. Yeah. I just don't understand. But so being subject matter experts and bringing in the right people at Integra to help with the solutions to find the best solution for the client is what we do, and that's how we strive to make it better for the client and their overall experience, right? If I get a happy client, he's going to tell another one of his friends about Integra, and it's going to grow that way for us too. So.
And I love just that example, right? So two things you just shared there is discovery, right? Not coming in with a kitted solution. Right. But on the other side is just being curious when it comes to something like packaging. My phone rings. I have no experience. I've read the documents, but I understand the emotion and frustration from my clients when they don't understand, what the new expectations of them are, but they can reach out, the partner at Integra and learn a little bit more. Not decidedly what can we do? What are we required to do here? What's the cost? Sat through a meeting last week around the cost of some of the new initiatives in this market. If you're a multi-site operator, are significant, especially if you didn't get ahead of it. So one thing that came out from a conversation in one of the other episodes is how do we just ask for help from the people we care about and trust? We don't have to have all the answers. Sometimes in our industry, we kind of stay inside our four walls, but if our supplier partners like Peter are there to give us some support, and I'm sure if they don't have the answer, they'll find somebody who can. And we're not just here to pump Integra, it's just a reality. We're talking about partnership. Yeah. What Peter said there is just talking about partnership. But what I want to get into, because this is as we get into our last couple of questions here, I think we all learn from experiences. And I think people talk about fail. I love to fail, but I don't fail with intention. I've never went out and intentionally wanted to fail, but I do fail forward, but I learn from my experiences almost every day. But Kelly, if you could share with someone, what are the 3 common challenges, and it's a big word, but mistakes somebody should consider? Like, how do we learn so we can make sure to avoid what somebody's already gone through that might have maybe gotten in the way of success?
Yeah, I would say, the first and foremost, the most important thing when it comes to a catering program is that you really need to recognize it's a team effort. And you have to be leading your team and showcasing the priority of catering amongst all of them. There are just too many touch points throughout the catering process, from the moment the guest is inquiring or is asking questions in the restaurant to the second the order comes in, to the day that it needs to be executed, to the person. There are just so many touch points that so many of your team members are involved in. And unless the expectation with them is fully clear about why the catering program is so important and getting their buy-in and making them feel responsible for that important transaction every time you get one, that's where the programs will go to fail. That is, I will tell you, the easiest way to get more catering orders is execution, and execution starts within your four walls and your team. And so you have to get that buy-in, you have to get them excited and make them fall in love with the program.
And so, like, we have some ops-minded leaders that'll be watching this. If we go to, say, the top of the funnel, which would be first contact, because something you shared there, right? And I work with, we do a lot of workshops, do 150 workshops a year, so there's always a lunch. Sometimes it comes from the operator, sometimes it doesn't. But when I talk to my friends and the frustration of and we just look at top of the funnel, right? A funnel's put downward pressure to get your product there in a way that meets their needs and delivers a great product. But they have a first interaction. The first interaction that they have with your catering ordering system, is there a best practice there? Is there a time frame we should look to respond? Is there technology? What would you recommend to somebody when they're looking at how do we make sure that the first interaction of what's available and the options are, or the experiences, might even be interacting with the website over a phone call? I don't know. Tell me a little bit about that in your experience.
Yeah, urgency is everything when it comes to catering. And so you want to, make sure that guest can check out on the website, or even if they're on the website, is it clear who they need to call or get in touch with to be able to talk about catering? When you put yourself in the shoes of the person that's placing their order, that is just such a small component of their day, but it's a really important one when it comes to placing that catering order. I don't know about either of you, but I have had to sit in front of a room full of hungry individuals and say, sorry, it's not coming, or sorry, lunch is 2 hours late. And there is nothing worse than that feeling. And so, for the person that's placing that order, they want to be able to trust the group that they're working with. They want to have a good feeling about it. And they want to know that that food's going to show up, and they're not going to have to be that, sweating individual panicking about how am I going to feed everybody that's staring at me with angry, hangry eyes. And so I think, you're looking at that process. You want to get back to the guests as quickly as possible, because if you don't, the restaurant right next to you will. And so if you want those catering orders and you want that urgency, again, it starts with your team and making sure everybody is excited about it. I remember the days when Easy Cater was just getting started. And the restaurant group that I was with, we'd sit there and we had our inbox up and it'd be like, cool, we got an order, right? And everybody got excited about it. Yeah. And I think that's the energy we like to bring to catering, is that you just got a phone call, you just got a lead, you got an order. That is awesome. And so how do you kind of build that energy and that momentum of where everybody wants to talk about catering? Everybody gets excited when a catering order comes in, because that's what's going to lead to sort of that very much team environment in making the program successful and growing.
No, yeah, and I love that. And the side of looking at it as something that's critically important. If we bring back to our day-to-day experience, we always do workshops with staff, and we ask, say, frontline staff or entry-level managers into our industry what their favorite guest experience is. What shocks the leaders is they traditionally go to companies that are web-based. Amazon always comes up. So say, tell me your favorite retail experience, your guest experience. And it's because the urgency, the rate of sale, and the delivery. So one of the realities is we need to look at, if I can go on my phone on Instagram, I bought a lot of ridiculous stuff in the middle of that Instagram, where I click a button and it shows up at my door. But if that's what we're used to in other retail environments, we're retailers. We have to turn food and beverage into optimal retail dollars to be successful, but we have to meet the guests where they're at. And I couldn't agree with Kelly more that urgency and timing of response is probably more critical today in all we do than it was in past months or years. But Peter, tell me, if there's one thing that you can share with me, Peter, as you look towards 2025, what are some of the tools and resources that Integra is bringing to their partners, to the market, to potentially people that are looking at new opportunities and new partnerships? What are some solutions that people should be looking forward to in 2025 to help their business?
So 2025 for us, first and foremost, beyond a shadow of a doubt, in my opinion, it's our Integra Shopping Assistant. And Integra Shopping Assistant, I'm going to say ESA going forward because it's just shorter, and I don't want to say Integra so many times, but it's really a groundbreaking program designed to enhance your purchasing experience in order to drive value and standardization. So what ESA does is it's an overlay over your e-commerce that you're currently using with your distributor, whatever ordering platform you're using. So it's an overlay that goes right in front on your screen. So in real time, you can see when you type in a product, I'm looking for a product XYZ, it comes up and it says, hey, this is a great product. However, it's not a product that's going to drive additional value for you through the Integra program. What we can do is we offer you a couple of other options. So we show you what is contracted spend with Integra and where you're going to get at a better net cost at the end of the day. So, what its beauty about ESA is that it's in real time. They'll see the price that they're going to have to buy from the distributor right away, and they're going to see the savings they're going to get. They won't see how much money they're going to get back from Integra, but they'll see if I'm spending $10 on product ABC and Integra's promoting XYZ and it's going to cost me $9.50. I'm saving 50 cents off the bat. Plus, I know I'm going to get additional value after the fact. So ESA is by far the biggest improvement for us at Integra. And during COVID, when everything shut down, like literally shut down, at Integra, so proud to be part of this organization. We didn't lay off anybody. We focused on how can we make what we're doing better. And that's what we focused on for a good year. And we improved our quarterly reports. We improved our analytics and our purchasing analytics. We improved our cost optimization tools. And, and when we pair that with our subject matter experts, that'll help guide you or work with you to make the best choices. It's all up. As I said, Integra, great company, more than a GPO. We really want to be a business improvement organization that'll help you increase your costs. Not increase your costs, increase your savings. Yes.
But what I would say, I'm very grateful for what I do. But Peter, what you just shared there, and Kelly, you probably saw it too, was the emotional reaction when you shared proud. I get a chance to work with a lot of incredible global brands on the supplier side, and that's not always the response. But I think the language to go back, we've been talking about things, EAS, just as something looks short.
ESA.
I was just making ESA. But I know, for my part, it's been something that's been talked about for a while, right? Even we go to order fulfillment or optimization or right products, and people have wanted it. And I think the opportunity now is, how, and this is about all the solutions, all the technology, all your partners, how do you optimize what's available? Often our partners have much more than what we know or what we're optimizing. Say, like our POS system, we're usually using 30% of our POS of what it could optimize and support us. But we have these tools, the opportunities, be curious of how we implement. Now the big closing question, Kelly, this is, everyone's held on to this point. We need to close strong. We need to have fun. Pressure here. And you can talk about catering or Eddie, because Kelly's one of the most humble people I've met. But the exposure of leaders and brands and people she works with in the industry, the exposure she has will probably be matched by very few in North America. Looking towards 2025 and hospitality operators, what's one area you think they should focus on? What's a trend? What's a focus? What's something that you're just deeply passionate about helping people consider and then execute in 2025?
Yeah, I think when you, obviously catering, right? That is going to be the core and is amazing from a transaction standpoint inside of your restaurant. I think the tricky thing right now is that when anybody is talking about improvements when it comes to restaurants, everybody just says, oh, it's technology, right? You have to invest in technology. And while technology is definitely an element of it, when we are looking at catering programs, I am so passionate and confident that it still relies on local store marketing and being present in your local community. Catering is driven by relationships. It's driven by people wanting to work with people that they know and love and brands, again, that they trust, right? And so that is not something that you can hide behind a Google ad, a Facebook ad, the best online ordering, whatever it may be. It is something where you still need to have that personal touch. And so having that community plan of how you're going to be visible and people are going to know your restaurant within your 5, 10, 15 miles, that is what is most critical, is being visible in your local community. And that's where those relationships and those orders will come from to not only grow your catering program, but it trickles down to every other thing that you're doing inside of the restaurant as well.
And I think that's why me and Kelly and Peter have so much value alignment, right? It's technology in support of our goals. One thing I say to all my clients, I get calls every day, every week about I'm looking at X. And my response is X is always great, whatever it is. But is it in support of your intentions and outcomes for your business, whether it's Integra Shopping Assistant, whether it's your catering program? I think when we create, and this is my biggest takeaway from this, is Kelly sharing, are you committed? Are you all in? Have you burned the boats for a dramatic term, or are you just going to go all in? Because when you do, everything about exposure to, when they're all in, they get great results. But how do we go all in support of a bigger outcome? It's a spoken wheel. Catering, your partnerships with your suppliers, employee shopper assistant, they should be in support of something you're looking to achieve. I couldn't be more grateful for both of you offering your time, sharing your experience. I think we've got a lot of context for the audience. We'll look to provide resources and tools that support this conversation. We've all taken time here today. It wasn't just a share conversation. I think there's a lot of content out there. So we want to stop consuming and start executing. So we are here to help you create, momentum in what you want. You've got to do your side, but we've got tools, support, and resources. And like I said, 2025, as Peter said, we're not looking to go to the cold in the middle of the winter. Bring Kelly up here in the winter. Peter's telling me don't ever go to Winnipeg. It's all another conversation. But on our side, in the summer, we'd love to get Kelly up here and sharing in our future workshops and talks. But it's somebody who's reachable, accessible, and we can have this conversation virtually. It doesn't necessarily have to be on site. But please reach out to Peter or the team should you want more insight or support. I thank you for watching. And thanks again, Kelly and Peter, for your time today.
Thank you very much.
Smart businesses are working with group purchasing organizations. Smarter businesses are working with Integra. That's because we are much more than a GPO. We provide more experience, more product categories, and more operational solutions. Integra is expert advice, quality and flexibility, purchasing power, and partnership to optimize your operations, elevating guest experience while saving on goods and services with the insights to keep your operations ahead. We know the challenges of operating in restaurants, lodging, senior living, golf, leisure, faith-based organizations, education, and acute care. So we provide services and solutions to help you maximize your profit margins. Save up to 30% on nearly everything you buy. From food to furniture, fixtures, uniforms, linens, capital equipment, services, energy, cleaning, and even training. Add in advice from experts who know your industry, and there's no better partner to take on inflation than Integra. With a deep bench of procurement experts monitoring prices, contracts, and supply chains, we help you find cost-effective ingredient options that exceed your customers' expectations. At Integra, your spend is always in your view and in your control, with data analytics and digital tools to ensure you're always getting the insights to operate more efficiently. Gain easy access to temporary and long-term staffing, your most frequently purchased products, and solutions for waste reduction and energy usage to keep your customers returning and your operations thriving. Unlock expert insights, unmatched purchasing, and unlimited performance for your business. Meet Integra and see the difference today.